Everyone here trying to get a glimpse of the 2 arrested gunmen and 3 others neutralized by the force as the State Commissioner of Police briefed the Imo State Governor Hope Uzodimma over an early morning attack on the state headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission in Owerri. The gunmen had launched an attack with a dynamite on the police post which killed 2 officers before proceeding to the INEC office along Port Harcourt Road, where they were repelled by the police and suffered heavy casualty, although parts of the commission's facility were destroyed from dynamite explosion. And back here at the police headquarters, the commissioner relays the sequence of events.
What they did was to throw dynamite into one of our hillocks. So they were able to kill 2 of my men, and later proceeded towards Port Harcourt Road. So after getting to Port Harcourt Road, they now went to INEC office. Our men at INEC office now engaged them too, but there were so many. So some of them were now throwing dynamite and petrol bomb into INEC building. So that was why it caught fire. But because of the firing of my men, they were not able to go with one of their vehicles. So they left the Lexus Jeep there. So from there, they were now trying to escape. They don't know about our own strategy too. So they now gave them a hot chase. So we are able to neutralize 3, recover 3 AK, and recover 3 pump actions with some of their IEDs, and in fact, about 4 of their vehicles. So these are the 3 being neutralized. Now, we don't stop there. We now went ahead again. We have been able to arrest 2 alive.
Governor Uzodimma, who commends the force, maintains that attacks on INEC offices in the state is promoted by the political class who don't want elections to hold.
If you collaborate this with events of the past, where I have continuously said that what is happening in Imo State is politically contrived. Some people who think that they can win election, yet they don't want elections. How would they then win? INEC does not need this distraction at this point and stage of our elections.
And away from the police headquarters, the resident electoral commissioner in the state assures that the attack will not stop the activities of INEC.
By the grace of God, we'll go ahead. We have called the policemen to come and help us. I mean, to strategize, recruit, and make sure that the policemen are there for those that will come and collect their PVCs in the various local governments.
Meanwhile, emergency services have brought things under control on the affected structure, and normalcy has been restored as the people of Imo State expect not to see a repeat of this dastardly act as they head to the polls next year.
And that's precisely where we're starting from this morning. The latest of the attacks on Imo State. Recall that we brought you that story, broke that story here on Sunrise Daily yesterday, and we were able to speak with the police public relations officer much later. Our reporters were able to speak with the commissioner of police in the state and also the governor in the state as well. But there are big questions as to what precisely is happening. I mean, these attacks on INEC offices are now clearly appearing synchronized and, I'm looking for the right word now, but it does look like this has been intentionally orchestrated. So the question is, to what end? What do the people who are carrying out these attacks have? What strategy can be put in place to ensure that many more offices of INEC do not come under attack this morning? Well, we have with us Mr. Mike Ejiofor, who is the President, Alumni Association, National Institute for Security Studies, and also a former director with the State Security Services. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
How concerned were you when you saw the latest attack on Imo State yesterday?
Yeah, I was actually concerned, very, very concerned, because this is not the first time. We've had series of attacks We had attacks in Ogun State. We had in Oshu the same day. And but I think we should be able to segregate the attacks. The attacks in other parts of the country apart from the southeast. You will be able to see the difference. The ones operating in the southeast, although the governor said yesterday that they were political, I tend to agree with him to some extent that, it's political. Some of them operating under, the criminal elements, operating right under the name of IPOB. Recall that IPOB had also denied any connection with such attacks, and even the sit at home. So these are just criminal elements serving some political motives. And I'm equally happy. I want to use this opportunity to equally commend the Imo State Command of the Nigeria Police for not just killing some of these bandits, but also making some arrests. These two arrests, I think there are two that are alive. I pray the police also handles them well in conjunction with other securities to at least debrief them. Let's know what their intentions are. Who are their sponsors? These are very, very critical questions that must be answered, to forestall further attacks. There have been attacks too in Enugu, Imo, Anambra, and all this. The way I'm worried actually is that these attacks are going to persist. From our own from our own analysis and trend analysis, it's going to be intensified between now and January.
That's a very worrisome
It's
prediction.
It's worrisome.
As you rightly pointed out yesterday, the police, some of their officers paid the supreme price.
Yes.
They lost 2 of their men while giving a hot chase to the people who carried out the attack on the INEC offices. But you said that we need to segregate the attacks. Why do we need to? To what end would that be?
Yeah, you see, these attacks are more now in the south. You recall that before the 2015 elections, the Boko Haram were also carrying out attacks in the north. But in the south, the attacks in the southwest, for instance, are purely political. They look at strongholds of their opponents to make sure those like the PVCs and this are destroyed, to deprive people, disenfranchise them from voting. That is just their aim. But in the southeast, it's quite different. Because these people are armed, they are killing people, they are attacking INEC facilities, carrying out political violence, attacking rallies and opposing supporters. So that's why I say that as campaigns hot up, we are going to expect more. But hope is not lost too. I believe that the security agencies and intelligence agencies like the SSS at this point must intensify efforts. And we should not leave this to the security agencies alone. We need to get the people involved because their purpose is to truncate this process. Because with the INEC measures now being put in, I think I was listening to Mike Egini when he was talking about some shocks, surprises that are with politicians. You cannot carry ballot boxes anymore. You cannot just do stuff or write figures anymore with the new process. So what they do now is to go to the areas. They have 2 options left now. Vote buying. And with the vote buying, the government has virtually plugged the holes, with this new fiscal policy from the central bank. The president on his part has assured Nigerians that if the Senate is going to leave behind is credible elections. INEC has given all the assurances. So, you see, it's going to be very difficult to manipulate the process. Nothing is impossible in Nigeria. I'm not saying they will not manipulate, they will try to. Like vote buying. It's going to be difficult to buy votes now. But I can tell you from intelligence that what politicians are doing now, they are collecting figures, numbers, that's account details of prospective voters, so that they do direct transfer. But I warn that they're also making a very big mistake. Such transfers will be monitored. You have limits on which you can do transfers. So if you transfer bulk money within that period, and now you will have to explain to the regulatory agencies like the EFCC what you are doing with such money. Besides, if you look at the voters, there's hunger in the land. And my advice is, these politicians are using us as tools. And they just want to buy the votes. I look at them as investors, people who are not even coming out to serve the people. So what they now do, if you transfer that money, my advice to the voters, if you see any money in your account, collect the money and vote your conscience. Because it's not their money. If they are really out to serve the people, they should be buying votes. So we have a lot of challenges. But my worry is that with these measures put in place by INEC, the government, we are going to have a lot of electoral violence and possible attacks on opponents. So everybody must be involved now. See something, say something. I think all the people should be involved in these activities of monitoring the election. We should not leave it to just the electoral agency and the security agencies alone.
Well, I think you've tried to differentiate between the attacks that have happened in the Southeast, especially this latest one, and other attacks that we have seen. You said something to the effect that politicians are trying to weaken the votes of their political rivals in their strongholds. Some people will say that could be what is happening in a place like Imo as well. Wouldn't that be the same motive?
Well, that's why I say to some extent that I agree with the governor that it's political. But besides that, there are also some of these criminal elements parading under the name of IPOB, trying to, the agitators, have tried to, fortunately, Nnamdi Kanu, who is the leader of IPOB, has issued statements dissociating IPOB from these attacks. We believe what he has said. But you see, there are other elements who are also self-serving, issuing statements outside from the country, telling people to sit at home. And, these criminal elements, once they hear sit at home, they want to exploit it, intimidate the people, harass the people from coming out. And you can see a viral video that is in place, telling this is our government will not agree. At times some of these things are simulated, to create fear and panic among the populace.
But somebody died, somebody was killed.
Of course. That's the point I'm making. Somebody was killed.
And the commissioner, I think, nearly lost his life in that attack.
There have been series of attacks and kidnaps too within the same area. That's why I say that these criminal elements operate. The security agencies need to intensify more efforts to identify and bring these people out, especially with this arrest. We must know their motive. You can see the number of arms and charms recovered from them. And some of them believe that with these charms, it doesn't make any sense to me that with these charms, they cannot be killed. It's foolhardy for somebody to believe that a bullet will not kill you because you are wearing charms all over your body. What's their end? They all died. But I'm happy of these arrests that have been made. It will serve as a lead to further investigation, possibly bring down these activities. That's a huge development, a success that has been made by the command.
So we could be having, you have also predicted, it's quite grim. Nobody likes to hear that sort of prediction. But if something has happened in the past, the likelihood of it happening again is very high. Given this, how the police responded to this particular attack in Imo, do you think that it could serve as a deterrent for any other, future attacks that could be happening, or that could be targeted at the INEC offices in whatever state?
I tell you that I'm very, very happy with this arrest. and the killing of this, because it's going to decimate their ring. You know, they operate in cells. They are not operating in one particular state. They have links. So with the break, there will be a kind of a break in their chain of links.
That is assuming it was the same group that is committing the attacks everywhere.
Most of them operate together. They don't operate in silos. Most of them operate as a group, especially within the axis between Anambra and Imo, Ihiala, Osu, and those areas, which is where they are concentrated in the operations, Olu, Osu, Ihiala, and Newi axis. You know, so those are areas they operate. And with the activities of the Anambra state government, you know, going after all these elements, the tendency for them to relocate to Enugu and Imo states are not likely. And
yeah, so that's within the southeast, but it doesn't affect other regions. For instance, the attacks that we saw in Ogun and in Osun State.
That's why I say we segregate them. Yes,
that would be IPOB. You know, is very slim.
No. That's why I say that we should be able to segregate them. Those are purely political. You know, I cannot say on authority, but they are sponsored by politicians, especially when you have strongholds, you know, of your opponents. You try to weaken and make the election look incredible. That's what they're trying to do.
Okay, so I'm just wondering now, moving on, when we talk about security, what arrangements do you think should be in place? Because looking at the structure, even though the police did say that they had people on ground and they responded on time, there was still some significant damage done to the INEC office that we saw in Imo. We've seen in other places in Ogun, for instance, the visual that we just saw of the INEC chairman inspecting the office that was burnt and the PVCs, the INEC equipment and PVCs that were burnt as well. He has reassured voters that those PVCs will be reprinted. However, if INEC has to do that, we hope that they don't have to do that, you know, too many times. It could bog down the process of preparing for the main elections itself. So what sort of arrangements do you think that security agencies should be putting in place to forestall any further attacks on INEC offices?
Yeah, that brings me to the issue of, I sympathize with INEC. You know, what they are doing, you know, they have tried as much as possible to see that this election moves on forward. And for now, these issues should not be left for the INEC alone. And besides, the police does not have the capacity and the capability to effectively cover all the areas, all the INEC offices. So I also recall that, during elections, the State Security Service, for instance, mobilizes retired staff to assist. And I expect too that other agencies should engage their retired staff. In the police, for instance, there is no local government in this country that don't have retired officers in the army, police, navy, and I think there should be a synergy. They should gather all these retired people under a platform, within which to assist in various communities, maybe at the local government, at the world level, to assist, because intelligence is critical in these, in pursuit of these solutions to our problems. So, apart from engaging the retired staff, like I said, I was just recently elected as the national president of the Alumni Association of National Institute for Security Studies. I've also charged my members to assist the security agencies. One of the critical areas we have to assist the security agencies who have serving and retired personnel. In states like this, it serves the issue of, rivalry, between agencies. You can come to a state, you have fellows of the Security Institute in charge of being commissioner of the police, the state director of state security, correctional service, so the tendency for them to work together is there. So what I also suggest is that they should use these avenues, especially retired persons, not only retired officers. Mobilize the citizens. The citizens need to be mobilized to participate actively to ensure that we have a credible process of this election. Because if we don't get it right in 2023, it will be very, very sad.
When you say mobilize the citizens, what do you mean?
Like, we have a local government chairman, they should be able to call traditional rulers in their areas to educate them, make them security conscious, what they should look out for during the election. Because the intention of these people is to frighten people, create fear for them not to come out. So they need assurances from government. You mobilize from the local government, the traditional rulers, churches, mosques, everybody to get involved, that these people who are doing this don't mean well for our country. So you need to talk to them and awaken their consciousness on their civic responsibilities, not only to vote, but to protect their votes and guard the process.
Mr. Ejiofor,
Let's flip this conversation out to Lagos.
Brilliant idea there, Mr. Ejiofor, when you recommend that security agencies, well, the authorities can enlist the services of retired officers, to help out, particularly because of the, weight and importance of the elections. But I wonder how that will play out, because it goes back again to the problem of funding, which is, evidently why the force is as slim as it is. And then to the attack on Osun and Ogun State, the attack on the INEC offices in those locations, you have analyzed that it is very slim, that it is has been carried out, by IPOB. But then again, if the analysis is the same as that politicians are attacking, the strongholds of their opponents, where they may their opponents may take some quantum of votes, is it the same, for Osun and Ogun State as well? Perhaps if you could speak to those two issues.
Well, I think I have to correct this. I said some criminal elements. I didn't say IPOP. I said some criminal elements using IPOP as a foothold, to operate. Because actually, the leader of the IPOP has dissociated himself from, the sit at home and all these attacks. That's not the way to go about the agitation. And that's again what I said when I segregated them, that some of these attacks are politically motivated, especially in their opponent's stronghold. And remember that when we started, I said we are going to expect more of these attacks towards the end of the year, because at that time, there'll be migration and movement of people from various parts of the country, all going back for the election. So they will be at home. Most of these politicians, operate outside their bases. I talk like members of the national, except for the governors and the members of the state assemblies. The National Assembly members, they all operate from Abuja. So this is the time for them to go home, to mobilize their people. And we expect escalation of all this violence, because there is no way, I'm not saying full 100%, but at least there's reduction of manipulating the process if we must take what INEC is telling us for now. It will almost be impossible for you to manipulate the process. So the thing is that they either embark on assassination of opponents, and that is why politicians on their own part must be very, very cautious of their own security. You go about spraying money when people are suffering, you have major threats in your area, and you are throwing parties and all this. These are unnecessary. You're only exposing yourself to danger. So the politicians on their part must also take cognizance of their own personal security, because it's going to cut across, and we expect a rise, within this period on political violence.
All right. I'm also interested in, the analysis on the impact of the new fiscal policies on the electoral process. I'm going to follow up with that, but that will be after the break. Let's take some messages now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still on to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. And we're still looking at the practicality of holding the elections in 2023 against the backdrop of the recent attacks on INEC offices and possible solutions, to some of these issues. We have with us Mr. Mike Ejiofor on the program. He's the president, Alumni Association, National Institute for Security Studies, and former director, SSS. Thank you, Mr. Ejiofor, for holding on. And before the break, I recall during your commentary, you also talked about how the withdrawal limits, would impact on the elections, and especially because those who withdraw in bulk between now and the time of the elections will have some explaining to do. That's spot on. But then again, recall that, at the advent of the announcement of the new fiscal policies, videos began to be surfaced online, of decomposing Naira notes found in trucks, and some only weeks ago found in bags and in certain, locations. There just may be some more of those Naira notes hoarded somewhere, even though the CBN has said that we've been able to mop up some old Naira notes to the tune of billions of Naira. What if those could also somehow affect the elections next year?
Yeah, you see, all those videos you see of decomposing Naira, we should subject them to some critical analysis. Some of them, from investigation, are just scenes where central banks were destroying money. Nobody has come out to tell you that this is the house of the person that this money was recovered, and no action has been taken. So we need to subject all these things to some questioning. Then coming to the issue of vote buying, like we said, one of the frustrations of politicians is this fiscal policy that was brought in. They cannot anymore distribute money. And some of them have started, and I warned some time ago in this program, that people stacking money in their houses. Now, some of them even went to the point of putting dollars in their houses. Now, how do you exchange the dollars? Are you going to distribute dollars to the people? And how many people are you going to distribute dollars to? Because some of them still have dollars stacked in their houses. So it's a very good measure that government has taken. And like I said, the frustrations of the politicians include these fiscal policies, and that's why they have resorted now to attacks and disruption of the process. But all hope is not lost. My advice is, before somebody credits your account, because that's what they're going to do, go and mark it. That's what they're going to do. They're going to transfer money to your accounts, for maybe they transfer to a coordinator who in turn will begin to distribute it. So you'll be able to explain to EFCC or these financial regulatory agencies what contract you have with such people. And not only monitoring, we should follow its logical conclusion by prosecuting such persons. And in criminal law, for instance, where when you are convicted of an offense, you are barred from holding office for the next 10 years. But what do we have? Electoral violence, somebody is caught, electoral malpractices, some people are declared that their office, they should vacate their office because of the electoral fraud. The next election is contested. So I believe that one of the ways of checking this is such monies are tracked and identified. They should be able to prosecute those people and bar them from holding public office. And that's why I also come to the issue of this electoral offences tribunal. Government needs to fast track or create this electoral offences tribunal so that some of these electoral offenses will be tried and it will serve as a deterrent to others. We have a lot to do because 2023 is a make or mark for us.
Well, Mr. Ejiofor, my challenge is on something that, you know, we have also talked about a few times before. Looking at all the issues that you have addressed this morning, the attacks on INEC facilities, the risks to the elections, and this, you know, CBN cashless policy and all of that, there are questions for me around, number one, the integrity of the intelligence gathered, whether or not intelligence is gathered, that some of these things are likely to happen, and how actionable they are by whom. Because I'm wondering how there would be an attack on INEC facilities, for instance, and we do not have intelligence that this is going to happen. I mean, you have just given us some information now that people will go cashless in their efforts to, you know, buy votes or whatever it is. I mean, going by what you just said now about people transferring money into people's accounts. So if all of this information is ahead, who should be taking steps to ensure that they do not happen, since we know that they are likely to happen? Who gets ahead to ensure that INEC offices are not attacked? Who gets ahead to prevent some of these things from happening? We know that the law says the police, the primary function of the police is prevention of crime, not detection. Prevention of crime. That's for the police. But intelligence is supposed to know that these things are going to happen. So how do these things happen? And it seems like it's just catching us unawares.
A very interesting question, you know, because first of all these operations are intelligence-driven. The intelligence is not lacking. I can assure you of that. There's synergy. If you interview the commissioner of police, not in my place to begin to disclose what is happening behind the scene. And, you know, the SSS, for instance, is shy of coming out to tell you exactly what they are doing on rare occasions before they come out, when it's absolutely necessary. So there's a synergy, there's intelligence exchange between the primary intelligence service, the SSS, and the various security agencies. And how do you know that there was not sufficient intelligence before this attack that also mitigated what would have been worse than this? So it's not something we begin to discuss on air, but I can assure you that it is sufficient intelligence. Don't also forget that several arrests have been made that the SSS is not coming out to tell you because it will compromise their investigation. Mm-hmm. Now, why I'm happy is that these people that were arrested yesterday were arrested during the act. So we need to protect them. The police, the SSS, they need to have a joint investigating team so that will provide further leads from the activities and preventing them from what is happening. So the intelligence is there, I can assure you.
Well, there is no doubt that the intelligence is there, Mr. Ejiofor. The question is around preventing them as opposed to having them happen, and then, you know, we try to mend fences. For instance, all of the facilities of INEC that have been destroyed have to be replaced before the elections. They are definitely not things that were planned. So that's what the question is around. How do we ensure that they don't even happen in the first? Is there a way to, well, you talked about some being caught in the act, but some things have already been destroyed. I don't know if you think it is possible for us to get so ahead of this criminality that we catch them before they happen. We know that some of these things have happened before from security forces and from what you said, with collaborations.
But I think you are pushing me to possibly disclose some of the operational tactics and the strategies, which I'm not in a position to do.
Not necessarily.
Because I'm not in the SSS.
Not necessarily, Mr.
And I'm not
Ejiofor.
their spokesman.
My apologies.
Now,
Not
the point
necessarily.
to me is that...
Not necessarily pushing you to disclose. Is it possible for us to prevent these criminality from happening, rather than they happen and then we begin investigation? Is it possible to prevent them from happening These things have happened before.
There are so many. There are so many. There are so many that have been prevented from happening, which you are not aware of. It's only one that happens. You know, I'll give you an example, you know, like football, for instance. When people are playing and winning, nobody is talking. But once there's a sleep, everybody wants to kill the coach or the players. But the successes they make, you can see everybody is talking about Morocco now. Is the president only the African country? It's just like intelligence service. Most of the things they do behind the scene to prevent what is going to happen from happening, you don't know. It's only when it happens they begin to ask, what did these people do? And the police, I can assure you, the level of cooperation and synergy between the police management and the state security service is very robust now, including the army, the air force. Everybody's putting heads together. You had the chief of defense staff the other day talking about politicians putting them under pressure to compromise the process, which they say they will not do. So these are intelligence-based issues that are discussed at high level before a statement is made. So there is a sufficient intelligence, and I'm happy that there's synergy between all the agencies. We have no cause to worry, but as time goes on, we need to intensify more effort. The reward of hard work for me is harder work, so we need to do more. That's the point.
Well, just one other thing that is already in the news that you are aware of is the ultimatum given by the DSS concerning fuel scarcity and supply and all of that, with that meeting held last week. Well, the ultimatum, 48-hour ultimatum, ended on Saturday. And there are those who are wondering, of course, you've heard so many people say, look, all of the threats being issued by the DSS is empty. One said by the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana. Another one came from Ipman yesterday on our program saying there's nothing the DSS can do unless some other things happen within the mix. Well, the DSS says they will take certain actions. In your opinion, what should Nigerians expect from the DSS concerning fuel supply?
It's the DSS, as far as I'm concerned, from the statement made by the public relations officer, was just an advisory, not a threat. So the issue of threat, for me, is an empty threat, does not arise, because the DSS has never issued any threat. Well, you ask me of intelligence. You don't know the intelligence the SSS has before coming out with that statement. I told you when we started this program that the SSS hardly comes out to make a statement and take it or leave it. 48 hours after, I can assure you, it's not assure you, you ask people who are in Abuja here, although the queues have not completely disappeared, but it has eased off. That shows that there is intelligence on what is going on. You know, there's a lot of fraud within the oil sector. And I believe, too, for the SSS to issue such a statement or advisory, they're going to follow it up. And the NNPC, a day after, issued a statement. They have released 1.9 billion liters of fuel. Are you not aware of that? So what caused that? And, you know, it takes time for them to transport all these fuel and to their various destinations. So I believe that the team will work out. And
you say that
just a point of clarification.
You say that the queues in Abuja have dissipated. Not so much for Lagos, because even this morning our guest on his way said he was almost caught in 2 of those. And as you can see on the screen right now, the long queues haven't so much dissipated. People are still very apprehensive about getting fuel and all of that. So the question really is around what should, and by the way, the DSS gave a 48-hour ultimatum. Well, sounds like a threat to me. If you say it's not a threat, that's cool, because you are a former DSS operative. So what should Nigerians expect from the DSS? What practically can the DSS do around this? We know, there are concerns about security imperatives and all. What exactly from your experience, can the DSS do to arrest this situation?
Well, following the advisory from the DSS, I believe they're going to follow it up, with action, possibly inviting and by the time I believe they invite the people responsible because they know before coming out with such statements, by the time they start inviting people, to give account of what is happening based on the intelligence available, I think Nigerians will say that, but the SSS too, is charged with providing intelligence in maintenance of internal security of this country. You recall, I think, Occupy Nigeria. If you continue to see these people in queues, the tendency for people to rise up against government is there. Whereas there is fuel. I agree, I sympathize with the marketers that they are not meeting up with the prices. But I think this subsidy issue is eating up everybody. And by the time the subsidy reduces and the market is liberalized, I think the issue will be resolved. But for now, we have to manage the situation until we are able to get sufficient fuel all over the country.
It's really interesting to see the DSS intervene in the fuel situation, and I think that the results which we will see in the coming days might continue to be varied until the root problem is eventually resolved.
Yeah.
But moving on now, I just want to know, because we're still in this election season, you have been able to tie almost everything together, from the security effect, the attacks on the INEC offices, which we have seen, which is in the area of security, to the policy of the CBN, talking about new Naira notes and how that's going to also have an impact on the elections, and even the stability of the polity, ahead of the elections, especially with situations like fuel subsidies or fuel queues appearing at different filling stations. This is December. It is the time when many people move around, to go and meet their loved ones. It's the holiday season here in Nigeria, and I think a lot of schools have already taken their holidays, as the case might be. What are your predictions for this season right now? Because right now, INEC has started the collection of PVCs. Distribution of PVCs. People should go and start picking up their PVCs. And we know that there is a lot of movement within this period. For how long would you say that INEC needs to keep this up? Because for a number of people, the time they're going to be making their holiday arrangements might be about now. They might not be able to pick it up, about now. We do not know where they intend to vote. It's not going to happen until the following year, when people have now settled back, perhaps at their places of work. For how long do you think that this distribution of PVCs need to go on for?
I don't have the details now, but I know that INEC has a timetable for distribution of these cards, both at the ward level, at the local government level, the state level. So I think there's sufficient time. They must have looked through, gone through it, within the program to ensure that everybody collects their PVCs. And again, like you said, this is a period for traveling. A lot of movements are going to take place. How many people, because of the security situation too, are ready to move out of their stations? If you come to Abuja, for instance, traditional weddings in the southeast are now conducted in Abuja. So how many people are going to travel to vote in the first place? So we might likely have a low voter turnout in the suburbs where people, except people living in Abuja, the politicians, of course. Abuja, Lagos, they are the politicians. But the people who are living...
Politicians often relocate to their places of origin.
Of course, they have to go back.
Yes.
They have to go back. And I'm afraid too, because going back means exposure. But you are representing the people, so you must go. Whether you are from Borno, whether you are from the southeast, the southwest, nowhere is safe now. So everybody must go home to go and canvass for votes. We conducted the election at the heat of Boko Haram in 2015. So whether we like it or not, people must move.
How
But
worrisome is that for you?
They must be very, very conscious. They must be security conscious of the environment.
How worrisome is that for you as a security, as someone in the security sector, that nowhere is safe in our country except a few, maybe the city centers? That must give you cause for concern.
It's really concern, you know. I worry a lot about it, but you agree with me that our security agencies too are doing their best under the prevailing circumstance. Now, you can see that the issue of the Northwest, the mass kidnapping, has reduced because the president gave an order that these people must be brought out. That's what I also expect between now and the election, for all the security agencies to rise up to the occasion and ensure safe route for the people to move about and, ensure this is not the time, for instance. You know, although you might have campaign rallies in some of these areas, but this is no time for frivolities when you are throwing parties, birthday parties, marriage ceremonies, and because these are things that will attract these criminal elements.
So people must marry.
And people must marry, but make it low key. Like I told you, some people conduct their marriages now in Abuja instead of going to the village. Some people who lost their parents, they cannot go home to bury. So, but we must confront the situation frontally to ensure that, because the primary purpose of government is welfare and security of the people. The situation has been a little calm until these campaigns. And like I always tell you here, that most of our security challenges are politically generated. And you see campaign period too, it comes with associated threats and problems. So it's not unusual what we are witnessing now. But especially, I am worried about the Southeast. And I think government should take certain measures, decisive measures, to ensure that that area is safe for a free election.
I think it's a fine place to leave it. Your advice to government to take decisive measures about what should be happening in the Southeast. We have to thank you so much for sharing your time with us this morning and also giving some very good responses to the situation which we're looking at. Mr. Mike Ejiofor is the President, Alumni Association, National Institute for Security Studies, and also a former director with the State Security Services. Thank you so much for coming on once again.
Thank you.
We take a break at this point and we'll be back shortly to look at something else. Please stay with us.